Hey everyone, Eriger here, and I just baked this cake. Well, not just, I ate some of it, but you know what I mean. So about 8 months ago, Tasty released a recipe for what they called the ultimate chocolate cake. Now, for something to claim that it's the ultimate chocolate cake recipe, I just had to try it. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to record my overall process of making the cake. I do have a few pictures that show my kitchen was pretty much a complete mess while I was making it, so there's that. Overall, this was a pretty easy recipe to follow, but I did run into a few complications that may have led to differences in my cake and Tasty's cake. So I just wanted to tell you about them in case you wanted to try making this cake yourself. So Tasty and several other baking channels claim that Dutch processed cocoa is really easy to find in your local supermarket, but for me, I find that really isn't the case, and the only cocoa powder my local Target or Costco seems to have is Hershey's. I tried to get as close as I could to Dutch processed cocoa. As you can see, I bought this special dark Hershey's cocoa, which is a blend of natural and Dutch cocoa as the label says, which I presume is just a mix of the two different types of powder. Because as you can see from inside the container, it really doesn't have that distinctive red-brown color that Dutch processed cocoa has. So I'm sure that definitely changed the overall taste of my cake and the frosting. Looking at a few photos of my cake, you can tell the color is slightly different from Tasty's video. So I would say that is the biggest difference in my cake and Tasty's. The three secret ingredients were mayonnaise, espresso powder, and stout. Now, mayonnaise is pretty easy to find in your local store, so that wasn't a big problem. I was a little confused on the espresso powder because I wasn't sure if they meant ground up coffee beans or instant coffee. I opted to buy this Cafe Bustelo instant coffee from Target. It was only 99 cents, and I just needed a few packets to fulfill the recipe's needs. But the most confusing secret ingredient for me was the stout. I really don't drink that much, and I am not of age to legally purchase alcohol in the United States. So I just had to use what was lying around my house for this recipe, and I ended up using this Imperial Stout, and it seems to be a pretty special stout as well. It says Imperial Stout with orange zest, cocoa nibs, and vanilla beans. So this seems to be a pretty flavored stout, and from what I smell of it, it smells pretty strong. And I think that may have introduced some additional flavor into my cake as well. But another part of the stout that was confusing to me is the measurement. Now the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of stout, but I wasn't quite sure how to measure it because pouring beer or stout or other alcoholic beverages introduces a lot of bubbles when you pour it. And if you're watching the video, you see that Claire, the Tasty producer, pretty much just pours the stout into her measuring cup as a one and done deal. So I wasn't quite sure how to measure 1.5 cups of stout with all those bubbles. What I ended up doing was pouring the stout into a measuring cup, letting the bubbles settle, and then pouring a little bit more. And I did this a couple of times until the liquid part, only the liquid part, reached 1.5 cups of stout. And based on the taste of the cake, I think that might have been a bit too much. When my cousin and I ate slices of the cake, we both detected a slight trace of the alcohol still within the taste of the cake. It didn't ruin the cake or anything like that, but we could still tell that there had been some alcohol poured into the batter. And I'm pretty sure that's not what Tasty intended. I can definitely see how the stout adds to the unique complex flavor of the cake, but I may have overdone it, and you may want to do less rather than more when it comes to the stout in this recipe. But other than those few things, this cake was pretty easy to make, and I don't bake that often either. But enough talking, let's have some cake. I really shouldn't be having this for breakfast. Well, By the way, something I forgot to mention is that I used a lot less powdered sugar for the buttercream in this recipe and Tasty called for. Tasty asked for about 5 cups and I'm pretty sure I used closer to 2. I don't like using too much sugar in my buttercream. It really doesn't add to the volume at all, it just controls the sweetness. So feel free to use as little or as much powdered sugar as you want. Okay, let's try this cake. Yeah, that's pretty good. I would definitely say this is probably one of the best chocolate cakes I've made and maybe even tried. If I were to try describing how it tastes, I would say that when you take a bite of it, you instantly realize how simple all other boxed or store-bought cakes are. The taste is really rich, deep, and complex. I'd say that the best thing about this cake is that it is really rich, but not very sweet, which is where a lot of chocolate cakes tend to go wrong. So if you're a big fan of chocolate cake, I highly recommend you try out this recipe. It's pretty easy to follow, and it's a really good cake, I have to say. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a comment below of what you thought, and let me know what you think. I don't know what I'm saying. This cake is too good. Let me